Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend-Gard, your host, and I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. So today we talk with Michelle Lindsey. She is a brand ambassador for Quiltsmart, and we talk to her about what that means. She also has a blog, Teacup Cottage, and she is so involved in so many ways. We're really looking forward to chatting with her.
Absolutely. My name is Michelle Lindsey, and I am calling from Houston, Texas.
Awesome. And tell us your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life.
Wow, that is going far back. So without giving an idea of my age, I cannot remember a time where there was not sewing or crafts, yarn art being done from the elder females in my family. Yeah. My paternal grandmother sewed all of my clothes growing up until I was about 7 years old. My brother and I were a year apart, and therefore we were dressed in identical homemade clothes until I guess we were old enough to contest it. Uh-huh. And my maternal grandmother and great-grandmother both sewed. We had stuffed animals made for us growing up. We had stuffed animals that were actually older than us that had been passed down from aunts and uncles and our parents before us. So I would say that from birth, I was pretty much immersed in the creative art life.
That's really interesting. Now, did you do it? Now, as a kid, how much did you sew yourself as a kid?
Well, when I was 5, I was introduced to cross-stitching because at the time, my mom and her friends who did play dates, aside from me, all the rest were boys. Uh-huh. And of course, being the youngest and the only girl, I was often not invited to play with the big boys. Yep. So my mom's friend, Susan, taught me how to cross stitch at the age of 5.
That's cool.
And so that was something that I was really excited about and really interested in through my teen years. And then in my teen years, my mom had been introduced to quilting by her mother-in-law, my stepfather's mom, at the time. She had been introduced into quilting, and so when we spent the weekends with her, I was watching her sewing and stuff like that. But up until that point, I had only seen sewing as far as clothing and things of that nature, stuffed animals, toys. That was the first time I was introduced to quilting and using sewing as a way to make home decor in a broader term. And I kind of fell in love with that. So I started to experiment with that. But again, I was 14, 15 years old and did not want to ask my mom, how do you do this? How do you do that? Right. My first 2 or 3 quilts that I have were very much experiments. My first one was just the classic, squares together. Yeah. I used some sort of reproduction of the seed packet fabric and the country sort of fabrics like that. And then my second one, I got this bright idea to make sort of half square triangles. But then when I put them together and laid them out together, I was putting matching squares together. So in essence, I dissected a square and then I put it back together.
Interesting.
Because I wasn't alternating. And I still have that quilt to this day. It has not been quilted or put together. But I look at it and I was like, I made it so much harder because I was a teenager. I wasn't going to ask my mom. It's totally not cool.
Right.
So as I moved into college, my mom and stepfather acquired Bare Thread Designs, which is the manufacturer of the applique pressing sheet. And she had taken that product.
Hold on. So let's, so say it again so that people, because that suddenly was a whole new thing. So tell us again, yes. Your mom did what?
So when I was in high school, my mom bought the Bare Thread Designs company.
Okay.
And they are the manufacturers and creators of the applique pressing sheet.
Interesting.
And so that is the.
And does your mom still have Does your mom still have Bare Threads?
She does. She still has it, and it's been 25 years. Not really into the math of it, but I think she had acquired it at the same time that Maddie had created.
So interesting,
Quiltsmart.
Right? So Maddie is the owner of Quiltsmart, and people know Maddie from the Mondo bag mostly, right?
Yes.
Like that's her famous thing.
Maddie is, yes, she is the creator of the Mondo bag and the Lone Star with no Y seams.
Yeah,
and so from probably the beginning of both of their companies in the early 90s, they started working together because they realized that their products really worked best when they were together.
Tell us a little bit about your mom, what your mom's company sells. I'm at the website right now, but tell in case because people can't see what I'm doing.
Absolutely. So Bare Thread Designs is the manufacturer of the applique pressing sheet. And originally, that was created to do fusible art onto clothing. So if you remember maybe back in the 80s, early 90s, we would have like sweatshirts and T-shirts that had like teddy bears and like just fusible art on them. It might have flowers or, a house or a schoolhouse. And I actually still have in my studio, I have some of the original clothing pieces that came when she bought that company. And so she had the idea to take fusible art from clothing and use it to make art quilts.
Interesting.
And so she was not a designer herself. She was creating products to make fusible art easier for the designers who do fusible art. Because at that point, applique had been hand-turned, and it was a little more, time-consuming or labor-intensive. So they took that creation, the applique pressing sheet, and from there was born other products like the stick and press, which is the pressing sheet on top with an adhesive for the bottom that you can stick to your ironing board and have a permanent protective cover. So you don't have fusible on your ironing board cover. And then they have like the grip and press, which is again the applique pressing sheet top, but the bottom has a non-skid surface so that you can use it like at retreats and stuff like that. You can roll it up and take it with you and use it without it sliding across, whatever surface you have available to you at that time.
So interesting.
And so from there, Bare Thread Designs products just sort of expanded on the non-stick pressing sheet design, and they created a variety of products from there. My stepfather had a background in engineering, so that definitely helped. Because my mom is like the idea fairy, and then she's sort of like, honey, let's do this, and then he is able to use his background to sort of make it come to fruition.
Right.
So
interesting. Now, did they pursue patents and other things on the things, or did they, like, how did they protect, or did they just, like, I don't know, is there any intellectual, like, did they just, the Bare Thread design, did they do any patent work on it?
They do have copyrights and patents and things like that. At the time that they were expanding the company from the original pressing sheet, I had graduated from college and married and moved on to life as a military spouse.
Yeah. Right.
And so So that is sort of when I made that transition and they were growing the company's product line.
Yeah.
That is when I sort of volunteered to jump back into the quilting, sewing, and cross-stitch arena by offering classes to on the military base to military personnel who wanted to take classes, to spouses of deployed soldiers. We would have routine classes just to provide that sort of break from living a life of constant worry because your spouse is deployed, you're dealing with the kids, you may or may not be working. Right. I had several spouses who were in college themselves. So we provided a lot of classes. And then at our first duty station in Fort Polk, there was a group of military children who were being homeschooled. And so I was approached to help them with learning to quilt and cross-stitch because they had been working with a seamstress who was teaching the girls in that class at the time. There were boys later, but in that original class, she was teaching the girls at that time to make clothing, and they were wanting to branch out into more home decor type activities outside of clothing. And you know, I mean, teenage girls, you know, preteen girls, you express yourself through, you know, your clothing, your room, and stuff like that. And it sort of gave them the freedom to express themselves by making it themselves. So that was in the mid-2000s, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. That was the first time that I had ever taught creative arts outside of some classes that I had previously been teaching military spouses in a scrapbooking, organizing way. So it was fun because for me I mean, quilting and cross-stitching itself are both continually learning experiences. Usually, you never get to a point where you're like done learning. I know everything. And so for me, you know, the my students would come up with ideas and it was the opportunity to say, hey, I don't know, but I bet together we can figure it out. Yeah. And so we did a lot of that, and we loved that. But the problem that we soon ran into is what every military child learns from an early age is that it doesn't always last.
Yeah.
So parents will reassign to different duty stations.
That's really tough.
Or spouses and kids went back home while their soldier was deployed. And so that was when that is when we were trying to find a way for them to stay involved and to continue when they left. And that's when I started blogging, which at the time I was a journalist for the Army newspaper. And so I was writing. Writing was like second nature to me. But by writing it and posting it in a closed, you know, blog online where these teens could, you know, interact with each other and make comments and talk to each other and stay in contact with other military kids who had, you know, yet one more thing that they had in common.
Right.
It was the ability for them to do that.
Yeah.
And so I loved it. And it was probably 4 or 5 years later that I realized that blogging was like this influential type community. And it started, you know, to expand and just encompass all sorts of industries. Blogging did, and so we continued. It was a closed little group, and we called it the Traveling Teacups.
How great!
Because
how did that? That's the name of your blog. How did you get there? Why travel?
Right.
Why teacups?
So the name of my blog is the Teacup Cottage. And so originally when I got married and met and married my soldier husband, my Army husband, my grandfather, who had previously been in the military himself, and grandmother, who was a military spouse, he had brought back just random teacups and saucers from his travels, Japan and, all of these, Korea, places that he went. And so she had probably 5 or 6 teacups and saucers that had survived, their, I don't know, the 40 years that she had them or whatever. And so when I got married that first year, she was sort of downsizing and cleaning her, things out of her house. And so she gave them to me. Very cool. And so then my husband soon deployed to Afghanistan. And when he returned, he brought back with him a tea set from, it was actually a marble tea set from Japan.
Amazing.
And one day I'll have to put these pictures on the Teacup Cottage blog.
Yeah.
But, so he brought that back, and then so that was born into every duty station that we went to, whether he brought it back from deployment or we went to local antique shops and looked around. When we go on family vacations, we always get a tea set, or at least a teacup and saucer.
Right.
And I have a couple of completed sets. When he was stationed in Korea, I went and visited him and quickly learned that I am not designed to survive in 17-degree weather. But on one of those snowy excursions, we found a tea set there in Korea, and so I have that. And so every time we moved, we carefully boxed them up. They traveled with us instead of the Army movers and stuff like that. And so because military families are continually traveling, it just made perfect sense to call it the Traveling Teacups. And that original blog has since been retired, although the original members still have access to it. When my husband left the military, when he went to Korea was when we were leaving the military. Korea was his final active duty destination, and he was there for a year while I was home by myself with a 2-year-old. And we had, I had already closed down and retired the Traveling Teacups. And I was like, I'm not done with sort of cataloging my crafting. For me, it was just a way to be able to look back. I had, I was chronicling the projects that I was making for family and friends and activities like that. And so for me, it was just an online diary. I never really had any intent of creating a blogging community. Yeah. I was just, it was just a way of, keeping track of all the projects that I've made, which is great because looking back now, I realize that a lot of them were lost in military moves and things like that. And so I still have, a recording of them, even though I may not have a physical project, or I have, projects that I had given to military families who we've since, gone our separate ways, as far as duty stations and stuff like that. So it was a great way to chronicle that. They, a couple of them had asked if they could, have access to it. And at that point was when I decided to make it just open for the public.
That's very cool.
I mean, really, one of the best joys of quilting is for people to enjoy it. I mean, very rarely do we make quilts or we make, projects that we then want boxed away and put away. The joy of them is seeing people enjoy them and how they become a part of someone's life. Yeah. I'll still see quilts that I've made or project pillows, things like that I've made when friends are posting pictures, in the background somewhere. And it's great just to, see those little pieces of maybe a relationship that was short term because of the military life. You can see that it's still part of their really daily life. And so it was a way for, it was a way to stay connected, even though, the military life.
Do you think that,
leads short term?
It seems like with social media that we've sort of turned a corner. It seems like we have friends now that we don't even know, right? We don't know them in person. We only know them online. Family members are staying together, old friends from high school. It seems like, at least, like, I would imagine for military families who do have the brunt of moving around, and especially the kids, that this has just got to be revolutionary, that you don't lose your whole network and your whole family group. You know what I mean? Like, you're not starting over every single time, even though you are, that you can keep together. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it seems like it's got to be better, right? It's got to be better
absolutely. than
20 years ago.
With social media, especially when you have like kids or whatever who are, on social media. And I'm a mom. I have a young kid, but I remember before, in our early military careers, that I had, kids that I babysat for other military families and stuff like that. Like, I'm friends with those kids who are now, scary to say, but they are now, teenagers and young adults themselves.
Yeah.
Just following them and watching them grow up, where I started babysitting a 4-year-old, who, recently got married, and it's just, you can stay part of their lives,
right,
without, the constant, constantly having to say goodbye. You don't say goodbye as much as saying until we talk again,
right?
Because you have that ability,
right?
And it's the beauty of social media in relation to military families is that you can sort of have a conference call conversation with everybody when it's convenient for them. So you can post your pictures, you can post your comments, you can post exciting news, and then, these people who were once part of your lives can stay, connected with you. They can congratulate you because your child got into, Harvard, or they can congratulate you because you're excited that you have your first grandchild coming, and stuff like that. So it's, so that military family, which is a structure all unto its own, is, it's not broken. It's just redefined.
Yeah, it's cool.
I guess it would have been when my parents or grandparents were military, families themselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we hear stories all the time of how this World War II, soldier, or this sailor from, the Korean War is looking for members of his, his unit or whatever. And I think that we're going to see less and less of that in the future, because they are going to be able to stay in contact and stuff like that.
Right. No, it's so amazing. So interesting.
So, yeah.
Really interesting.
So you never really feel alone as a military family when you go to a new duty station, because the underlying gift of it is that while you are keeping in touch with people who are going in different directions from you, there may be a connection between somebody you knew 2 duty stations ago who have a friend that is at your new duty station, and they're like, hey, Susan, I have this, friend of mine who's moving in. Can you go check on her? Can you, welcome her to your installation? So you're essentially able to introduce your friends to each other at military installations without actually having to be there with them. And it's great because you can have friends before you even finish unpacking.
That's amazing.
And
right? It's really different.
A great community.
It's so amazing. I mean, it would really be interesting to see, like, I don't know, I'm sure they've done studies. There's all these people who say such negative things about, like, Facebook and all these other spaces. But I think that people are less lonely than they used to be. I mean, I really do think we live in, the community that we might have had in a, I don't know, it just feels like we went through a weird space of, like, we had a lot of community, then we didn't have community, we were kind of the nuclear families all by ourselves kind of thing, and now we're back to having a lot of community. It's interesting, Yeah,
no, I mean, when we, years ago, there, you had, like, your small town communities, like your sort of Andy Griffith type communities where people knew everybody, and, you could walk down the street and greet people that you knew. And then, our cities like Houston and New Orleans, and they start growing, and, you could go to the same restaurant essentially every week and never, sorry. And, never get to know, the people who are going there because, when you're living in these larger communities and cities, you sort of have tunnel vision where you're like, this is my world. And there's other worlds that intersect, but you're not paying attention to them like we did when we were in the smaller type communities. Yeah. But with the creation of social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or, Twitter and all of these, it gives us the opportunity to expand our world. Because not only are we talking with people that we know, we are joining groups and meeting people virtually, like creative arts committees or, food group. Like I'm a big, lover of, the sort of food communities where, whether it's restaurants or like, I love to see, sort of these dishes that, other everyday people are designing and see their creativity in it. And, but then it also gives you the ability to see what's going on in your community without, you don't get so much of the, I wish I had known that was happening, because you can go and, people are posting events all the time. And, we've lived in, communities as a military family where we go in and we sort of search the social media sites for events, according to our duty station or zip code. Yeah. And we're finding that they have like, Friday night, First Fridays, which was something that we enjoyed in Georgia.
That's
and then,
so
there's like air shows that we were
that's interesting.
Enjoying. And so it gives you the ability to get out and explore more of your community. And that gives you the opportunity to meet people in person. Yeah. And it's a great way to expand your awareness of your own community, or even communities that you are visiting. And it just, I think that, that social media gets a negative rap as far as kids are, people are always on their phones, they're always on their devices, but it also gives you the opportunity to go out and explore things that you might not otherwise have known about, because you're seeing it. Your friends are posting about, these activities that they're doing. Yeah. And it gives you the chance to explore your community more. Mm-hmm. So it definitely has both negative and positive aspects. Yeah. It's just, it leaves the ball in your court sort of analogy.
Right.
I mean, you can find activities, then you just have to choose to get up and go to them.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
And so the knowledge is there. It's at our fingertips now. We just have to use it in a positive and productive manner, and that's going to broaden our horizons.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is amazing. This is really very cool. I think this is so great. And we have not talked about anything we're supposed to talk about.
I know. I am an eclectic sort of, and maybe
so
that's
bad.
why I work so well
so
in
bad.
Marketing.
Yes.
That's maybe why I do so well in marketing, because it's just random information stuck in my head, and people ask me a question and they are like, wow, I hadn't even thought of that.
No, we're so
I'm the
behind.
oldest of 12.
What?
So I'm the oldest of 12.
You are?
So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm the oldest girl. I have 3 older brothers, and then I'm the oldest girl.
Oh my goodness.
And we grew up on a farm in Louisiana.
Really?
We grew up on a farm in Louisiana.
Oh, that's cool.
In Tickfaw, Louisiana.
That's so
which is
great.
that small, tiny community. And when you have that many siblings, you're gonna get a lot of information that you really don't have any interest in, but you're kind of all stuck at the same dinner table.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's funny. I love it. Well, let's let's briefly tell me about, because we are looking at brand. You're gonna have to come back and talk to us more, but just briefly, let's talk about being a brand ambassador for Maddie. What do you think we're thinking about we're thinking about brand ambassadors on two levels. One, being a brand ambassador, like what does that mean when you say yes to somebody of being a brand ambassador, but also creating a brand ambassadorship for Just Wanna Quilt, because we feel like we'd like to experience having people be a brand ambassador for our thing that isn't defined, right? So we're like, well, what do you do?
No.
We're like, I don't know, we're just a thing. But tell us.
I absolutely love that idea. Brand ambassadors are something that has come around in probably the last couple of years. And again, social media and blogging have had a big impact on brand ambassadors, because people are opening up they're opening up to a wider audience. And so the beauty of brand ambassadorship is that it gives companies and organizations the ability to get awareness of their group or organization or products and services to a broader audience. But brand ambassadors are, in essence, different than salesmen, because if you think about traditional salesmen, you're told about the product, you're told about, here's the product, here's what we want people to know.
Right.
And so your salesmen go out and they do that. They're like, I'm with this company and this is our product. And, they essentially have memorized this spreadsheet of information that the company gives out. But with brand ambassadors, you get a little bit more creativity, because your brand ambassadors can open up not only their audience to your products, but it can open your company up to new ideas for your products that you didn't even know. And this is something that Maddie and I work on all the time. Maddie, of course, is closer to my mom's age, which is a young 20.
Right.
Maddie's still young, but she's closer to my mom's generation. So she's thinking, on one path, whereas when I look at her products, I'm like, oh, we could do this
it's
differently.
Interesting. You guys were at Quilt Market, right? And what I thought was really interesting is that the quilts that were up at Quilt Market were very modern. They were traditional, but then there were also modern versions because Maddie's stuff is using interface to make patterns that are really complicated easier, right? Like the double wedding wing and the Lone Star.
Interfacing.
Yeah.
Yes, it takes the difficult steps out of making traditional quilts. And that's what she does, traditional quilts, like the Lone Star and the and the double wedding ring.
Totally.
And, so it's taking out that curved piecing. It's taking out the Y seam.
Yeah, and I tried the double wedding ring, and it was super fun. So she sent me some. I still have a Lone Star. She sent me a Lone Star, and I haven't quite gotten to it yet because, I'm overwhelmed by life. But it was super fun, and you felt really confident, and it's like you can do it. Also made one of the Quilt As You Go quilts that are just perfect and wonderful. And it's so funny because I told her this. People are really like the quilt that I made, and they're always like, well, I really like that one. I'm like, well, that one's, Quiltsmart's Quilt As You Go. Yes. They're like, see, you don't even know, do you? So, it's like, don't judge.
It's really amazing because when you're working on a traditional quilt, like when you're doing, say, the Lone Star, you're really focused on getting your points even, doing that Y seam, trying to make your star perfect.
Yeah.
But her method with her printed, fusible interfacing takes all of that out of the equation.
Yeah.
So then suddenly you're left with these, completed diamonds that you can legitimately put together in any design that you want.
Yeah.
So I've taken her Lone Star and I took the 4 quadrants and I put, fabric. And today there's going to be a picture of it on the blog today. So it'll make it a little, easier to understand. But I sort of separated out the Lone Star into 4 quadrants, and I have contrasting fabric that goes between it and just kind of gives it a more modern look.
Right, and that's then, what And so what I was saying about this, is I think that is when we saw your booth, I was kind of blown away by it because it was traditional, but then you also had taken her stuff and made it really modern and really cool. Like, it was just like, I mean, not that traditional isn't cool, but I'm just saying that, like, it was like, wow, I didn't think I could do that with her stuff. And I thought that was really, really powerful, you know?
No, I agree. So when I mean, my mom and Maddie have worked together for half my life.
Yeah.
And so it was probably not until 10 years ago that I had seen Maddie's stuff. I'd seen my mom doing it.
Yeah.
I'd seen her teaching the classes. And I was like, that's great. It's beautiful, but it's so...
It's traditional, right? Yeah. And you're like, well, why would I do that, right? You know what I mean? Like, right.
Yes. And so there's two sort of groups or identities that I lean towards, and that is modern and shabby chic. Yeah. And I think the shabby chic is just because I'm in a house full of boys and I need something girly to, assert my own dominance. Yeah. But I love like florals and stuff like that. But I love modern quilting because the thing about modern quilting is that it's not wrong. Yeah. There's nothing that you can do that's wrong. Yeah. It's going to be, and everything is unique and can be one of a kind. Yeah. If that's what you choose. And that's the great thing about modern quilting. Yeah. So when I was looking at her quilts, I was like, I love the traditional, project, but it wasn't something that sort of pulled me towards it. Yeah. Like, I'm like, I like it, but it doesn't make me want to sit at the sewing machine well past dinner time, well past my bedtime, and sew. And, so I had made some samples. I had helped make samples for my mom who teaches classes. I had made some samples for quilt festivals and markets. Yeah. And that sort of got me thinking, you don't have to follow the rules.
You don't have to follow the rules. That's right.
It's probably not like a cool thing for a mom to say, and don't tell my child that I said that. But you don't have to follow the rules. Like, I got to certain points and I was like, how can I make this different? Yeah. So there was one, I had taken her smaller Lone Star in October and I had split it up and put the right side, on the left and the left side on the right, so that the outside points of the stars were facing each other, and the inside was, the border. Right. And, I was just like, I don't have to follow the rules. Yeah, like, I can get to a certain point and say, how do I make this mine?
Well, I think
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool. And I have the Lone Star, so I can't wait to see like what you do with it, because maybe it'll inspire me to figure out what to do with the one that I have, because I keep starting it and then thinking I don't know what to do with it. But the other thing I thought was really cool is you guys had flowers. Maddie gave us a sample of the flowers, and we're trying to think about a way to do. We're trying to do sort of small sew-alongs where we can earn a little bit of money, but that they're really simple projects that you can just do, and if you wanted to do them, and also that didn't cost a lot for us to mail to people, because we're all about absolutely. And so we loved the flower. It's like a 4-petal flower with a circle in the middle, and so we're thinking about doing that as kind of a mini sew along that that people can like ask for how many petals they want, and we can send it and then sort of see what happens when everybody makes their own version. That's kind of our thought,
Her zigzag series, which is the ones that you're talking about, where you have sort of your shapes that you sew to your fabric and you turn right side out, sort of like you would a sock. Yeah. Those are the ones that I was doing long before I was doing her traditional quilt, because it lends to so much creative, freedom in doing those. Because you have these flowers and, you just top stitch them down to, your background. So you have the ability to, cluster them or put them individual, or, she's got stars. So you can put stars at the top of it and make it like, a flower garden at night. I mean, there's so many options that you can do. And again, the modern community loves it because she's got circles, she's got hexagons, she's got petals, and it's just the creativity is endless. I mean, you're only limited by your own imagination. That's the great thing about Quiltsmart, and that's why I actually approached her about being a brand ambassador.
You did.
Because I was like, there is so many things that can be done more than just, you know, one or two minds coming up with. Like the more people you bring in, the more feedback and the more collaboration that you can get. And the creativity just increases exponentially when you have that.
No, it's totally true. Well, you see the impact. Now, how many, are you her only brand ambassador, or does she have others that work with her?
I'm the only official brand ambassador right now.
Yeah.
She, originally, I was working with her about 3-4 years ago. I was working with her marketing director at the time, who was my age. And we really hit it off, and it was like within a week, it's sort of like that best friend type, you know, mentality. And I had been obviously tagging and hashtagging Quiltsmart and Quiltsmart products in my social media accounts and on the blog. And her marketing director at the time contacted me and was like, I love it. I'm trying to show the expansion of how these products can be used. Yeah. Like, you know, it's not like you buy a Lone Star, you make a Lone Star, you never do a Lone Star again. I've probably got 6 Lone Stars in various stages of completion right now. That you can just, and there, you know, you can make it different every time. Yeah. And her marketing director at the time was like, I love, you know, some of the stuff that you're doing. I had made, like, she has a wine bottle tote, right? You've seen a wine bottle that like gift bag or whatever. Well, I, at the time, had a 2-year-old, and I was not necessarily carrying a wine bottle around with me, but I was carrying toy cars, and I was carrying crayons and stuff like that. And I was like, this is the perfect little tote because it has the little drawstring, you know. I was like, that I could just put his toys in, I could cinch it up, throw it in his bag, and then wherever I'm at, just pull it out. Here it is. It was easy tote. And she's like, I love it. I love, you know, having people at different stages of life.
Right. Yeah. So you're like repurposing the stuff that she has for like another generation kind of thing. Because, you know, I was kind of tired of stepping on Matchbox cars. Yeah, it was not. It was not what I would look forward to in the mornings for sure. On the way to the coffee pot. Right. But it was great because if he, you know, like if I was at a meeting or something and he was, you know, with me, or we were out and about and somebody was like, hey, let's grab coffee. Like I was set. I had like 2 of those filled with toys that stayed in the truck. I had 1 filled with toys that stayed in the backpack. So I could just sort of rotate them out. Like when he was getting bored, just grab a different color. I was like, I had green last week. Let's do the blue one this week. So different toys. Yeah. So you see a brand ambassador then as you reached out to her. You were able to sort of put a new spin on her products. So then she could use that in an interesting way. And that you add to the brand by your creativity. Does that sound about right? Yeah. So as a marketing person, there are like 5 things that I talk to people about that is benefits of brand ambassadors. Yeah. And that is your brand ambassadors are understanding your company and products, and they are telling people about them, which is word of mouth is like the greatest marketing tool ever. It costs you nothing but happiness. And, you have a person who is passionate about your company. You know, they're organically passionate about your company and products. They're not, they're not being paid to be happy. It's not like, you're like, hey, come and, tell people how wonderful my stuff is, and you're coaching them. Yeah. They are organically happy about your products and excited to tell people about them. Yeah. And so their creativity is a bonus for you, because not only are they passionate about your products,
but their creativity can lead them down a different road than your creativity does.
Yeah.
And so while, the original team may be focusing on this is what can be done, your brand ambassadors have different life experiences.
Yeah.
Your brand ambassadors are using your products in a creative way that may engage other people. And, we all have friends who, love wine.
Yeah.
The wine bottle tote is great. But we also have friends who have little kids who are tired of filling their pockets and purses with, toys to entertain their, toddlers. And so by having brand ambassadors from different walks of life, different experiences, it shows your stuff in a new light.
Well,
so while somebody may look at something one way and be, okay with it, they may see it a different way and be like, that's something I can't live without.
Uh-huh.
And that's the beauty of brand ambassadors.
That
they're just using everyday life to market your product, and it just expands the audience, so much more effectively.
Yeah. And so interesting because this whole micro influencer movement that's happening right now makes it really interesting as well. That we like the average person, and that famous people are important too. But that adds a whole thing to it. So that's the other part of what we're thinking about with this, lots of different ways of thinking about how to be part of the community, be an influencer, all of that. Now, as a brand ambassador, what kind of relationship is that? Is she just sending you free product? Are you an employee? Sort of what is the economic or sort of legal relationship with her?
Well, brand ambassadorship relationship with the company is defined by each individual relationship.
That's right.
So depending on how they're reaching out, the structure of the company, it could be different.
Yeah.
Some people do it and you may see celebrities who do advertisements and things of that nature, for a monetary value.
Yeah.
Some companies, I tell my marketing clients that the best brand ambassador are customers and clients who actively engage with the company. They're already coming to you.
Yeah.
So you've already built that relationship. They're excited. They're buying repeat products and stuff like that. So when you reach out to those people as your initial brand ambassadors, then a lot of times you have the opportunity to say, hey, I will send you projects, I will send you products, and then you sort of determine between the two entities how often they will post, what information they will post, and stuff like that. And then you just leave the sort of needlework point up to them. Yeah. And, so it could be every week that they're posting, or once a month, or or things like that. Yeah. So my relationship with Maddie is more unique than most brand ambassadorships.
Right, because you kind of grew up with her, right? And she's like,
right, yeah. So Maddie's kind of like a second mom to me, and there will be times, and I'm sure like one of your girls mentioned it while we were there chit-chatting, is that there are moments that Maddie is looking at me like I am, her like master of marketing and lead me in this information. And then the next minute she's like trying to tuck my pocket in because like it's sticking out. Like she goes between this like, professional and mom type, relationship. And that's just because she knew me when I was, at a point in life where I was, a teenager and needed the guidance of, moms and stuff like that. So our relationship's a little unique. I have had my own marketing business for a couple of years. So occasionally, if she's got a big project coming out, or like you saw me in November at the market.
Quilt market, that's right.
Sometimes, So sometimes I will, jump into those roles. But brand ambassadorship in general is usually a defined relationship between a company.
So when you think about a brand
ambassador,
so we're starting to think about sort of what that relationship would be, and we're going to run out of time. But I think that our feeling is we see that what a brand ambassador, things that we are thinking about is, they're representing the company in some way, right? So there's trademark issues and sort of representing yourself as an agent issues, and all kinds of other things that we're concerned about on the legal side of it. And so we're starting to think through those questions. But I don't think the companies are as worried about that. Have you seen situations where like the brand ambassadorship has been revoked? Or do they often sign very serious like contracts? Most brand ambassadorships are getting like free product usually, right? That's like mostly what these brand ambassadorships are.
So it's sort of like the level of brand ambassadorship. I mean, there's a difference between being a brand ambassador for a quilting company or a scissors company or, a sewing machine company versus being like a brand ambassador for, a major, corporation that makes, like a beverage or something.
Yeah.
And so, there's sort of like different tiers of that level. And the companies that you see that bring like their legal teams and stuff like that into it are those who have seen, who've seen potential issues or had issues that have had to be dealt with and do that. But depending on sort of the relationship, you can define that stuff in the in your initial sort of contract. This is what our expectations are of you. This is what we will do in return. Your brand ambassador will agree or disagree. There's, conversation about it, and then you guys eventually meet in the middle and determine what your relationship is for the two of you, whether it's an entity or individuals. And that, and sometimes, I mean, I've seen it go south, and I've seen it become something that is beyond both, entities' wildest expectations. And I mean, it's sort of the risk of, or the reward. And, without one, it's hard to get the other, but it's just identifying up front what, the expectations are that are the biggest, that's the biggest hurdle sort of to get over. And then once you get there, what your expectations are as far as representing you. I mean, and you've seen and heard movies are always talking about legal movies, with moral clauses and, ethics and stuff like that. So the best relationships are built on a foundation of communication.
Yeah. It is.
And that's going to be your, foundation. And the more you communicate and understand each other at the start is going to give you, that solid ground that you're going to build that relationship on.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the first step as a company considering a brand or an organization considering a brand ambassador is what do I want out of it? And what are my parameters?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like when you take your, when a parent takes their child to, the park or something. Like, what are his parameters? Where can he go freely? And at what point do I need to step in and say you've gone too far?
Yeah.
Or he needs to come and find me and ask if he can move to another, section. And that's really, the key part of being, of having a brand ambassador program is to have that communication. Once you have identified what you want from it. And growth is always, what you want from it. But as far as what your expectations of them and what you're willing to, how much freedom they can have, is is key.
Yeah. No,
So,
I hear you. So interesting. Well, we're trying to work on all of this because it's complicated. And part of what we're doing is also moving. We have to identify what our brand is, right? So I think the Just Wanna Quilt podcast is staying at the university as part of the Copyright Research Lab. But I think we're moving off the Quilting Army and our brand ambassadors that would support the Just Wanna Quilt podcast to its a separate entity, because what we're seeing is we want to make sure that it's separate from Tulane so that we have our own brand, so we don't have to get everybody approved in some way by the university. And so we'll create a separate entity that will be, in part, the mission will be to support the Just Wanna Quilt project at Tulane, but it will be its own separate entity. And the Quilting Army will be a brand that will support Just Wanna Quilt podcast. So that's kind of our complicated scenario.
I mean, that's a common sort of conversation in the marketing industry, is when a new brand is born, like what, just defining your parameters.
Right.
So you guys are definitely, on the same, the path, the correct path as far as identifying it now rather than down the road when you have problems and you're like, we should have thought of this.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, exactly. We're also working on we're working on our structure, figure out what we are. We'll be very super transparent. So everything we'll share with people on the podcast so that other people can learn from it. But yesterday we interviewed a tax professor, and so she was talking to us about what structure we should be, and that was really cool. And I don't know. It's complicated. The whole thing is complicated and fun, but complicated. We also really want to do a program that. We see shops being nice and not nice, so we want to have a program that is kind of a quilting army pick, probably not approved, but quilting army pick. Just want a quilt shop, so that we have, that if you go to that shop, they're going to be nice to anybody who walks in. That's pretty much all we care about is. Just don't be mean,
absolutely.
Right? So we're thinking about that, and that will be again in the entity that we form for Quilting Army, and not at the university, because again, it gets into this conflict of branding with the university.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell clients who are sort of trying to figure out their brand that it's the same as being a teenager. You have to figure out what your own identity is.
That's right.
Before you can give that identity to other people.
It's true.
It's hard to say somebody
really
that's like, I want to be my friend, and they're like, cool, what do we have in common? You're like, I don't know who I am,
right?
So I can't tell you. You can't, and so you sort of have to, it's sort of the, you're past the infancy stage where, it's born and you guys have grown, but now you're at that teenager stage where you're like, who am I?
So
who
true.
are we? And who
I
do we
don't
want to
know.
be?
Right. And it's getting back to that. Right. And it's getting back to that core thing. It's so interesting, right? Like, who are we? We're like regular quilters and not, I don't know. The whole thing is so bizarre. So, we'll have to have more conversations.
It's the question of all time. Who are we?
Who are we? I know. It's so true. It's so interesting. Well, as our one-year-old birthday, we're approaching our first birthday. It's time to reflect. And it's been a really fun year and definitely full. So we got to figure out what our next step is.
I am very excited. I'm very excited to have found you guys at Market while working at Maddie. And I have learned, and like I said, creative arts in general is just a continually learning, experience. And that's the best part of it, is just finding new ways to learn. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And I'm excited to see, I was there, in the beginning.
Our first Market. Oh my gosh, so
I remember when.
Right, when we were confused and like hiding from people at Market because we were so exhausted. The thing, Gigi and I are both working on the flower, the 4-petal flower with the circle in the middle. And so maybe once we're just trying it out to experience it. But what we should do is probably chat with you and maybe work with you to think about how to get it out and have it. We're kind of doing it as a fundraiser for the Just Wanna Quilt project. And also to get the brand out, to get Maddie's stuff out. So it'd be fun to work with you on that and think about it. We're going to probably do it after Mardi Gras, which is in March. So our thought was to do something fun once the city is back to calm and quiet, as you know, sort of what happens here.
I don't know. I grew up outside of New Orleans.
You did? Oh, well,
so
it's late this year. Mardi Gras is late. And so it's funny, but everyone's already starting to be like, well, it's Mardi Gras season, so we can't really, it's like a month away. So I don't know. The whole thing is ridiculous.
I know. We already had to order our king cake because I was like, it's got to come from Louisiana. So
it's got to come from Louisiana.
I'm trying to convince siblings to come visit me so they can bring one.
Oh, very sweet.
You'd think with 11 that somebody would come visit.
Nobody's
offering up their king cake yet.
That's hysterical.
So I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I miss it. So I'm excited to see pictures you guys have to post.
Yeah. So
there's some Mardi Gras love.
Our Mardi Gras love, yes. Well,
I'm gonna have to make a Mardi Gras colored Lone Star because I feel like
that'd be great.
Something that should be in existence.
Totally.
So I'm definitely gonna have to try and work on that.
Oh, that would be great. That'd be really great. So, so I'll have Gigi reach out to you as well. But let's figure out how to work with you guys. We've never done that before. To think about how to make it successful and push the brand out, and to have these packets of flowers go out to people to make. So, we'll figure out how to do that. But I think, and Gigi does our videos and is kind of our like how it explains everything. She had a sewing company for a long time where she taught people to sew. So she does all of our videos.
Yes, Gigi entertains me.
She's wonderful. She loves you guys. Oh my God, she's like madly in love.
Entertaining.
She's like madly in love with Maddie's stuff. She just thinks it's the coolest. So, so I think. And the thing is that we're still a small group. We have about 2,000 in the group, and we have about 1,500 to 5,000 people listening per episode. So we're still like, for the first year, that's not terrible. But they're also super varied. So I think if people really want to do, like we have some doing the Gypsy Wife quilt, and if we got some people doing Quiltsmart stuff, that would be kind of cool too. Of kind of everybody can participate in whatever they want to participate in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm excied to see. It's just a community of sharing ideas. And from that, I mean, the whole theme of my blog is just to be creatively inspired.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what, the organization does. So I'm excited to see where it goes and see what, born from all of these minds coming together.
You've definitely post what's happening on your blog on the Just Wanna Quilt Facebook page. And also, will you post stuff that you do, like the Lone Star of ideas on Maddie's stuff? Because I would really love to see it. And I don't get out much. So if it's on there, I see it. Absolutely. It would be really great. Yeah.
Yeah, I will definitely post that. And awesome. We can all be creatively inspired.
Hugely. Well, I love Maddie. She was one of our first guests, and she was so kind and so supportive. Even though mine turned out okay, but she was so sweet, and she sent us so much nice stuff. And I don't know, she's just really got a good heart.
She is. Maddie is kind of like a Mary Poppins of quilting. She's just always happy. Yeah. And stuff just magically, gets done.
Right.
You're like, I can't do it. And she's like, no, just do it this way. And the next thing you know, you're sitting there looking at a Lone Star like, oh my gosh, I made that.
Yeah,
and
it's very cool. Awesome.
Great.
Well, I love chatting with you. Do you need to review this before we post?
No, I'm good. Just let me know.
Cool.
And I will post a link or update or whatnot on my account. Platform.
That's great. Awesome. This is so great. I love it. Gigi will be in touch with you, and we'll chat more, and I can't wait to play more. It'll be really great.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
All right, cool. Take care. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Garr. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.